out the playlist. We have a bunch of questions for paper 1 business management May 26th, and this is unit 1. Okay, and we're just going through a bunch of questions for practice, and I'll go through every unit. And we've covered the first sort of 4 questions, and I have a bunch of notes from all past papers and literally just everything. And so we may be able to even speed this up. State 2 external stakeholders of ABC. So from our case study, we can definitely talk about customers, right? Customers, pressure groups, right? Pressure groups, that's a big one, considering it seems to be a lot about the environment, and there's probably going to be something about backlash to, incineration and things like that. We have government, right? There might be government incentives to get into this e-waste market. Incentives. Here's just a state question, so you don't have to explain, but we do want to understand how we could sort of develop these ideas, because we could get a explain or describe question. There could be suppliers. So where do they get their sort of concrete aggregate supplies? Limestone. Forgot what the other materials were, but definitely check out the case study. And we have local community, of course. So let's put that here. Local community, right? And I think I have a full-on analysis somewhere down here, so we can look at that. Stakeholders, yes. Employees, these are internal, right? Employees, safe working conditions, fair compensation, job security. So you might want to know these as well. Internal. In fact, let me see if that's one of the questions. No, we're just talking about external here, but definitely always check the opposite of the term. We want to learn everything here, right? We're working towards the exams. So want company to be profitable, right? To ensure continued employment. So they want job security, right? This is just saying job security, which is up here actually. And so essentially, and they of course want max pay for min work, right? That's Taylor's theory. Not every employee, but most employees, right? We want to do minimum work and get paid as much as we can for it, right? Work is not necessarily everyone's favorite thing. Depends on what job you're doing, though, right? Next, managers interested in the business running smoothly, right? So that they can achieve their objectives of the company and maintain positive reputation. And so they're just staying aligned with the mission statement. That's their job, right? Next would be the board of directors. They're representing the company's shareholders, right? You can't have, especially with a public limited company, you can't have all these shareholders coming in to sort of argue about where the company should go forward, right? Some people own 0.1% of a company. So this board of directors represents the company's shareholders. And they're aiming to maximize shareholder value, which is essentially price per share times the number of shares, right? So the share value of uh yeah, of the shareholders sort of share in the company, right? So they get dividends, so you can measure shareholder value by dividends as well. Uh Provide strategic direction. So the board of directors is making decisions. They are working towards achieving the mission statement. They are guiding the company, right? They are the head of the company. They're the top managers. And so they provide strategic direction. And they minimize risk too, right? Okay. Next is shareholders. We have owners of the company, right? These are the owners. Now they aim to maximize their return on investment. So they invest some money into, let's say, buying shares, and they expect to receive dividends, right? Maximum amount of dividends possible, or at least ensure the business grows in the future. They minimize their dividends now, grow in the future, and so they have more dividends later, and they can sell their stock and ownership, sell their shares, and get more than that loss in dividends, right? So ensure business growth, right? So some people want maximum dividends early, so they're short-term sort of investors. Others want business growth, right? Those are the smart investors. Now we have external stakeholders. That's what we were talking about, right? We have customers. They would just want good value for money. That is what we are trying to provide as a business. Then high quality, right? You don't want a poor quality product. Then the if you're a loyal customer, you want the business to continue to operate, right? Operate as expected. So that's their interest in the company. Then environmental or pressure group. They're a group of people. Sometimes you'll be asked to define, so definitely remember this definition. Group who share a common interest to try to influence decisions made by an organization. Have an interest in the impact the company has on environmental, ethical, or social concerns, right? That's what a pressure group is. And so they can create negative publicity and sometimes they can create positive publicity. But I think in our ABC case, we might have a possibility of seeing pressure groups with, in terms of incineration, they could have had negative publicity. And so the benefit of moving into this e-waste market could be exponential, right? Improve their publicity, and boycotts are another thing. Next is suppliers who rely on business for work, payment, and sale of their supplies. So they want the business, how can I best put this? They want the business to continue operating, right? Because then they continue getting orders and they get payment for those orders, right? They keep getting paid for supplies. Now, yeah, that is exactly what I said here, right? Continuation and success of business sustain demand. So essentially the same uh idea there. Local community, again, continued operation and success. You can sort of see the repeated pattern here. Most stakeholders want the continued success in operation so that we can create jobs and bring money into the community, but we also want to be like pressure groups. We want to make sure our environment is protected, uh, the community is protected, socially, sustainably, and ethically. So these are keywords: environment and protected. Then we have our government, similar interests to local community and even pressure groups, right? Uh, we want to create jobs, create employment, reduce our unemployment rate, improve the economy, earn tax revenue, right? And that is bringing in money is again income from the company becomes their tax revenue. And but their main objective is to ensure everyone is complying with laws and regulations, right? So those are our stakeholders. Hopefully that made sense. We walked through all of them and had a few key points. So those would help with our explain and describe questions. Next, we have two advantages of ABC being a publicly held company. Okay, 4 marks. Two disadvantages of ABC being a public held company. Okay, we discussed this in sort of the first video. So disadvantages of converting from private to PLC, same disadvantages can be applied to the question we just saw, right? We have pay dividends to shareholders. In fact, I would ask you to go check out the first video because I covered this exactly. So there's no point covering it again, right? It's going to be repetitive for everyone else. So this has been covered, two disadvantages, and it's been explained, right? Just 2 marks each. Then we need two advantages. Now the advantage I would suggest is, let's go back here. Main advantages. So we have so many disadvantages here. I would say you're losing control over the company when you sell shares, and then you have increased reporting and disclosure of financials, right? That's the main two. Go check out the first video if you want more detail. Next, the advantage is you can sell shares to the general public, and so you have greater access to large amounts of finance. Um, and that includes share capital, that includes lower interest rates, that includes loan capital, right? Usually, as a bigger public company, you have greater access to loans, right? And larger sums. Now, and that would support uh, investment growth. You could see that definitely in the Abarca paper, right? They're probably looking to expand into the e-waste factory, e-waste industry. And the second advantage would be, definitely should add that, but it's exactly the same as a private limited company. Maybe it's down here. Yes. So what we have is business continuity if owner dies, right? So if the owner dies, we still have business continuity. The company does not depend on this owner, right? On this one owner. It has many shareholders. The company is incorporated, right? Which means separate legal identity from the owner itself. And that allows us to continue operations even if one shareholder changes or different shareholders come and sell their stock, right? So continue operations. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. That gives us two advantages, two disadvantages already. And we just have to apply that to the case study for that extra 1 mark. Okay, oops. Okay, my screen went out again, but we're back. Now we have, in the context of ABC, explain 2 reasons why corporate social responsibility is an important business objective. Okay, CSR is an important business objective. And that is exactly the same as our ethical objectives. We can probably say the exact same thing there, right? And it's still 4 marks, so one application, one sort of explanation and identification. Now, one thing we saw in the case study is it said something about their factories or concrete production is very carbon intensive, right? Number one, uh, concrete production equals to carbon intensive, right? So they need to reduce their emissions, right? So CSR helps reduce environmental harm, and that improves their reputation, right? Protects reputation. Now, I think I do have a section on CSR down here. Let me check this out. Yes, entire section. Some good stuff for you guys. CSR refers to our ethical strategic approach to businesses, that businesses take, sorry. And so, guys, this is the definition we have to remember. We're going to have definition questions, we're going to have describe questions, and this is going to help us answer those confidently, right? So, ethical strategic approach that businesses take to contribute positively to the environment, to economic and social development, right? In our country, in our in the global stage. And so we have to remember this triple bottom line: social, economic, environmental. And that already puts you up there in terms of convincing the examiner that you know what you're talking about, right? And so it's about ethical objectives. It's not a legal obligation, but it's a trend, right? If you show that you're committed to the environment, committed to social causes, committed to being economically sustainable in terms of creating jobs, um, being a sustainable business, and putting money into the community and still being sustainable as a business, uh, then you're essentially showing the community and customers and investors that this is a business that's here to stay, that's here to make an impact, and so you're creating good sort of brand image, brand reputation, and you're developing brand awareness if you're using social media, if you're doing sustainability reporting, right? These are all things you can talk about. And this is that's important for 10 marker, paper 3 17 marker, all important. Now, voluntary actions to address issues. Exactly, again, voluntary. Make positive impact on society while balancing stakeholders' interests, right? That is the important thing here. You're making a positive impact on society, but you also have to balance stakeholder interests. You have shareholders who want to make as much money as possible, right? Most of the time. You have employees that want to have a secure job security. They want good benefits. They want the company to keep going. They want to contribute to something meaningful. And so stakeholders are very important. Now we can come to this later. This is more for 10 marks, right? Here's more about what's the reason for using CSR. And so we have one reason there. The second reason is the thing about stakeholder loyalty, right? You improve stakeholder. Sorry about my guys. Just thinking as I'm going. So improve stakeholder and customer specifically, right? Customer loyalty, and that improves your sales, that improves your brand. In fact, our first thing to say is that our business is seen as more responsible and ethical, right? Seen as responsible, ethical, right? And now I can sort of draw a line in between, right? These are two separate arguments here. So that protects our reputation because we're not being carbon intensive, right? We're conducting practices that reduce our harm on the environment, so that protects our reputation. And now, because it protects our reputation, we're seen as more responsible and ethical. So this is a different argument, and that then improves your stakeholder and customer loyalty, right? So we're improving our stakeholder and customer loyalty. We can even add some extra points on there. Improved repeat purchasing, right? Repeat purchase or brand awareness. Especially if we're talking about customers, and that improves sales, right? Sales. And that then improves your profit, although we will have increased costs with CSR. So that's something for 10 markers here. This is just explain the two reasons. This is not advantage, disadvantage. Okay, now, so that's similar to our ethical objective. So we finished that as well. Okay. And another thing is they're also like better seated with the government, right? And pressure groups, right? Government pressure groups, so we can talk about that. Sorry, my screen is again. The thing is, we may see in our case study that the government may be imposing sanctions or pressure groups may be boycotting, things like that, right? So we can say avoid negative publicity from, right? Publicity from pressure groups, and maybe there's a application that we can make, right? Pressure groups are currently boycotting Abarca ABC for their incineration or lack of recycling, so we can make that application from pressure groups. And less compliance costs with the government, right? The government has sort of legislation, they put bans, they put sanctions if you're creating emissions. Compliance costs or need to, sometimes you have to purchase carbon credits, right? This is out of syllabus, but you definitely get the examiner on your side if you say smart things like this, right? Okay, so definitely search up carbon credits if you're interested. Then Yeah, so that's sufficient, right? We have two already. Now, next is to talk about why business objectives, ABC's business objectives might have changed over time. Okay, so let's get into that. And then after this one, we'll stop it there and get into the next few questions, right, in another video. Okay. So what we may see in the case study is that they have this new opportunity in e-waste recycling, right? So they have growth and sort of market potential expansion plans, right, in this e-waste recycling industry, and so their objectives have shifted beyond concrete production. So what we can say is business objectives. Okay, we don't need to list everything out. Let's make this quick. New opportunity in e-waste recycling, right? That means, let me make this a sub point. Growth, expansion, right? Room for growth and expansion. Maybe let me say that. Room for growth or expansion. Multiple revenue streams. And we can say that objectives have now shifted beyond concrete production, right? Growth plans or objectives shifted beyond concrete production and selling, right? They're a B2B company. Okay, so that's pretty clear. That's 1 point. That's 3 marks, right? And we can make the application to the case study, and that gives us the extra point. In fact, it's only 4 marks here. In the exam, it could be 6 marks, so think about that. Yep, my OneNote is having an off day. It's alright, guys. We can all have our off days. So we have one, and okay, we talked about. I'm assuming we talked about stakeholders in this video, right? Or in the previous video at least, and we have explained two interests. So I think we already covered that down below. So definitely scroll back in the video and take a look at my notes. We did cover that. Next, but we can just make quick points about that again. But what's next? We have to make our second point, right? 2 reasons. So one, 2 reasons. Second reason is they may have been facing pressure, right? From pressure groups, government, and that's what we've been talking about. So you can say they shifted because of that external pressure. Let me remove that. So external pressure from environmental concerns, so environmental activist groups, let's say, maybe that's in the case study, pressure groups, right? We can even include the government and government who, this could be an application, who push back against their, let's say ABC only had profit as their pure objective, right? They're a for-profit company, they're not a social enterprise, so against pure profit objectives. Okay, so they're in a big market. They do have the funds. They can incorporate some CBMs, circular business models, and they can take some time and effort and money to invest in CSR, right? So they pushed back against pure profit objectives. And so pushed, let's say pushed against back again. Okay. Pushed. Let's erase this. That's not the best way to phrase this. We can say pushed profit objectives, right? It's the external pressure groups. Oh, I'm still on my eraser mode. Pushed back against, not pushed back against, sorry. Pushed ABC itself, right? How about I just cancel this out? Pushed ABC away from their for-profit objectives, away from pure profit objectives, right? Now they have to make some sort of sustainability or ethical plan, right? Towards, right? Push them towards sustainability or ethical objectives, right? And of course, elaborate on any of this, but this is pretty clear, right? Pretty clear of an argument. So that's one. Then we have our chain of argument, right? We always want to make a line of argument, chain of thought. Next is these, right? So we have question 11, 12. 12 is a great question. 11 is great. We talked about it. 15 is great. So I'm going to go through 12 and 15 in the next video. So do check out the playlist for that. So far, we did a lot. So see you guys in the next one. Do drop a like and subscribe if this helped. And yeah, good luck for your exams and all the best.